What's going on, everybody? My name is David Delano, coming to you with this edition of the Get Sports Strong podcast for Thursday, February 20th, 2025. In this show today, we're going to talk a little bit about what I thought about the NBA All-Star Weekend and what to look for going forward in the NBA if you're looking to wager on some basketball. We're also going to talk about this Four Nations tournament in the NHL. We're going to talk about some tips for wagering on college basketball going forward as we get towards the end of the regular season here. Teams are getting ready to, the conference races are shaping up. And before you know it, we're going to be in the conference tournaments and we're going to be talking about March Madness, and everybody is going to be looking at those their brackets. So I'm going to try to help you guys out with this. I'm going to talk about a lot of topics on these shows pertaining to sports gambling. Now, I'm not promoting any type of illegal gambling on this show. I think that it's funny sometimes. I know it's a little bit of a taboo topic, and I'm saying this because sometimes you post these things and I don't want to. I'm not giving this to be in any violations of anything at all. There, I'm not promoting any type of illegal gambling on this show, but I'm trying to give people some good information that can help them out if you are going to be using any of these legal sports books in a state where it's legal. Because you watch the NBA, you watch the NFL, even Major League Baseball now. I mean, they're showing live odds as you're watching with different various sports books. It's really a fine line in the world that we are in 2025. But first of all, let's talk about this NBA All Star Game. And one thing that I want to do more on this channel, and I'd appreciate it if you definitely would subscribe. I want to do more than just giving out free picks. I mean, free picks. I want to kind of give people just some skills that they can use over the long term. We're not going to get into all of it on today's show, but just in the long term so that people kind of know things to look for themselves and they can make their own informed decisions. My name is David Delano. You can definitely check out getsportstrong.com where I'll be posting these episodes along with on this channel. So like and subscribe. I definitely appreciate it. Any topics that you guys might be interested in, whatever you think about the content, good, bad, or in between, I welcome all feedback. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about this NBA All-Star game. So this NBA All-Star format, we had a different format for the first time, up to 40 points. We had four teams. You had Candace Parker coaching or general GMing, whatever. Candace Parker's team was the Rising Stars. You had Team Chuck, you had Team Shaq, you had Team Kenny, kind of a young stars scenario, an international stars. They said, even though Donovan Mitchell was somewhat on that international stars team, and the OGs, as they should call it. And ultimately, Team Shaq ended up beating Team Chuck. And I know that there's a lot of talk about this All-Star game, a lot of criticism. I'm gonna bring up Draymond Green just for the sake that his voice was one that I've seen talked about on a lot of platforms. Did not sound, from what I've seen, as if he was a big fan of the format, and it didn't seem like he was particularly didn't seem like he cared for the rising stars being a part of the tournament. And I understand, and I know sometimes when you talk about these things, I know that a lot of guys like Draymond Green, I mean, they can of course fall back on this, and he's played the game at the highest level. He's a future Hall of Famer. But I also think that even though obviously he has a high basketball IQ, future Hall of Famer, a four-time champion, I think that sometimes being so attached to the situation and playing in the game, I think it's hard for guys as personal feelings sometimes not to get into that. Whereas an outsider, sometimes I think we may have a little bit of a clearer view because we're not as emotionally attached. And one thing about just this whole sports wagering field and field of sports is emotions can be your worst enemy. We kind of live in an era now where it's really entertainment over substance. Our culture, we hate on everything. We build people up to tear them down. We like the underdog until the underdog wins too much. Then we want to tear them down. It seems like we wait for people's downfalls. We diminish people who, instead of speaking facts sometimes, or speaking without emotion, we kind of tear down the messenger versus the message. And what I will say personally, the All-Star game, All-Star weekend overall, it needs a lot of work, but it's hard to expect a good product in the All-Star game when the product has been bad overall. And I'm a person saying this whose top two favorite teams, Cleveland Cavaliers and Houston Rockets. And so I should be loving this season, more than anybody. Some exciting basketball in Houston, and my team, my home state team, Cleveland Cavaliers, having an outstanding season. But a lot of this basketball has been awfully hard to watch this season. And before I go off on a tangent, first of all, I want to address, Draymond Green's comments about the rising stars playing. And I personally thought the best part of the All-Star weekend was the rising stars playing against the team of quote unquote the OGs on Shaq's team, because I felt that was the game that we got the best effort. I mean, you had the rising stars, Dalton Connect, Amon Thompson, who I love his game. All of those guys on that rising stars, you knew that the one thing is, we wanted to see guys play hard. We wanted to see some defense, and we saw that. We saw that they gave some effort, and it forced Team Shaq to give some effort to beat them, because those rising stars, they don't know when they'll be on that platform again. If not, if ever, they're all trying to make a name for themselves. They're playing against guys who a lot of them have idolized and looked up to. And so that was their opportunity. And of course, the OGs, they did not want to lose to the kids. So we saw some effort in that game. So I actually liked that part of the format. And and that's just kind of what it is. It's the all-star game, but a lot of guys not really taking it serious. I think that's I would actually like to see the rising stars come back, to be honest with you. I was a fan of that part of the format. I did think that the last game, the final game, was a bit of a dud there. I know it's an all-star game. I would have liked to have seen Shangun get more action instead of Nikola Jokic, who, might be the best player in the NBA, but doesn't really care too much about the all-star format. Donovan Mitchell, and I'm saying this as a Cavs fan, just for that particular game. And I know it's entertainment purposes, but thought he kind of shot his team out of the game in that one. Just for what it's worth, if you're going to take it serious, take it serious. In a game of 40, there were definitely some adjustments that could have been made, and it's just really hard to for me to watch some of this basketball, man. It is. You still see moments. I mean, Victor Wembanyama, you see those moments. You got James Harden and Steph Curry, kind of backing up as he's driving the ball. I guess it's just a day and era where, you're a foot taller than somebody, could go in and dunk it, or even maybe just, I guess you can't shoot an 8-foot shot in the paint anymore. You got to kick it out for three. And it drives me crazy. It really does. I know there's been a lot of talk about the women's game as far as them lowering the rims, and if women dunked, guys would watch basketball more. If they wore less clothes, they would get more watchers. And I don't really agree with either of those arguments. I don't know if people who aren't interested in women's basketball are going to be interested if you do those gimmicky things. So I think that they need to just continue to grow the game the way that they're growing it. You can't really compare the men's game to the women's game. It's never going to be on equal footing. It's just two different products, of course. The talent level, the athleticism, it's men and women, so it's going to be different. But if you actually care about basketball, like basketball quality, the women's game, I really am liking this unrivaled league, this 3-on-3, the one versus one tournament that the women had. The flow of the flow of pace. And I encourage you to, if you're just a basketball fan, someone into coaching basketball, teaching basketball, just watching good basketball. Yeah, I know they're not going to be able to jump over people from the free throw line and dunk on anyone, but the way that the women's 3-on-3 game is playing, it's they're really playing in a way that I believe basketball should be played. I think they're playing it the right way. And I know a lot of people will try to clown, they'll pick up some clips of some short missed shots and missed layups here and there. We just kind of live in this day of era with editing. You can pick out the worst of anything and make it look bad. But overall, of course, yeah, they're not as talented as the men in the WNBA, but there's a lot of talent still in this unrivaled league. And for what it is, I think it's a good product, and the women's game is going in the right direction. I would love to see like a 3-on-3 format. And I think we all would love to see a one versus one format in the NBA. But I think just with the amount of money made and the egos, I don't think that we would see that. So overall, I give the All-Star weekend, I give it about a C minus. They definitely tried, but that's better than an F from the year before. And also, real quick, talk about this dunk contest. Matt McClung won for the third straight year. Congratulations to him. I'd like to see him get some more action in the NBA, at least being on an NBA roster. I believe he's only played about 5 NBA games in his career. Actually, has done halfway decent for the amount of minutes he's had in a successful G League career. But congratulations to him. I know there's been talk about Giannis, John Morant, some different guys joining. I don't know so much if that's going to happen, but it would be interesting to see. One last thing here with the NBA All-Star Weekend before we just go in another direction that I want to mention. LeBron James, a lot of the heat that LeBron has been receiving after 20 straight All-Star appearances. He, at the last minute he opted out, and I want to call it, how I see it. And a lot of people may not like this, but I feel like if anybody deserves a pass, 40 years old, all the finals appearances, 4 championships. I know you could say he lost 6, but LeBron came out, won the gold medal, put on a great show. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and all those guys over the summer in the Olympics. Maybe he had intentions to go, maybe he didn't. But if anybody deserves a pass on that, it's LeBron. At the same time, I mean, Anthony Edwards pretty much did the same thing, and maybe he had rightful reason for it. Anthony Edwards backed out of the All-Star game. I thought he was going to be playing, but it is the All-Star game. And I know a lot of people, sometimes some haters on the other side, have been using this as ways to really criticize LeBron ruining the All-Star game. Kobe would never. And I think that's just one of those things that kind of just drives me crazy with a lot of with our society now. I think it's, how come Kobe can't be great? How come LeBron can't be great? How come Jordan can't be great? Because they all were. Why do we have to tear one down to build the other one up? Why is it that if you're a Kobe fan, you have to hate LeBron? And why do we, already say LeBron will never reach a certain plateau if you don't like him when his career is still going? Who knows how much longer it can go? But yeah, I was a little disappointed how he handled it. From first looking at it, but it is what it is. And if anybody deserves a pass on not playing in the All-Star game, it's him. Only he knows how his body feels. Nobody else has been able to play this long at that level. Jordan was a great player was a great player at 40, not this great, and he also took some breaks in between. Not a shot at MJ at all. But for LeBron, what he's done for this long, hey, nobody else has really been able to figure out that formula for this long. So, he's got to do what's best for him. So it is what it is. Disappointed not to see him play, but Like I said, Anthony Edwards did the same thing. Can't really kill LeBron without killing Anthony Edwards, which they're trying to do. And when it really comes down to it, I'm not going to kill either one of those guys for the decision. It just is what it is. I thought that the Rising Stars, though, was a nice addition to the All-Star game. And I would actually like to see that come back. All right. Thanks so much for watching up to this point. I want to tell you guys you can follow me on X at Get Sports Strong. David Delano over on getsportstrong.com as well. Go ahead and follow. I definitely would appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and get into some hockey here in this Four Nations tournament. And as we are at a point of the season where football is over, for those of you that are interested in sports wagering, before we get into baseball, which is my favorite sport to handicap and talk about. And I think that there's some tips I want to give people for, even if you're not a hockey fan, even if it's hard for you to watch, or even if you are a hockey fan, some tips that may help you be a little bit successful. I'm enjoying handicapping hockey. I'm enjoying it more. And just to be completely transparent, out of all of the major sports, the only one that I have never had any part of in my life, either playing, coaching, not even a pickup game, as far as physically doing it, is hockey. Uh, Grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and regardless of how I may sound, I'm not from the suburbs. We just didn't have the resources, man, for hockey. None of my friends were playing hockey. So it just was not an option, man. Now my high school, once I got to high school, had a great hockey team, has won several state championships. I wasn't playing hockey though. And but I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying watching the this tournament. And one thing I will say about the Four Nations tournament, we had three fights in the first 9 seconds of that U.S. and Canada game. And I gotta respect it. I've got to respect this all-star format. I can't really see any other sport going this hard for something like this. I mean, the closest thing I'd say is, the World Baseball Classic, something that I'm really a big fan of. Some people may not, but like I said, I don't want to get too off subject. But a little bit of a preview here. I'm gonna drop this before this Thursday game between Canada and the U.S. And this is one of those games I personally wouldn't wager on it, but one particular sports book I'm looking at right now, you got minus 106 for Canada, minus 106, for the USA. If you see a sports book that pops up with plus money, something with a plus in front of it on the Canada side, personally, I'm going to be going for Team USA. I'm not going to go against Team USA, but if as the lines change, if you're able to get something plus money on Canada, I would feel as though Canada is the play. The thing with sports wagering, it's there's always got to be a price for everything. One, you don't have to bet on things. You don't have to bet at all. And don't be so blind at just picking a certain side. You have to look at the number. The number has to be right. And if the number's not right, you need to know when to walk away. So I look at this, Canada and the US. US won the first meeting. I really think that this is about a 50-50 thing, meaning that if these two teams play each other 10 times, I see both sides winning five. And the US, they got the first one. That means that, play nine more times. I think Canada gets five out of the next nine matchups. Will that be Thursday? Maybe, maybe not. But, when you look at something like that, I think that Canada's the play. But I'd like to get more than 50-50 odds. I mean, that one minus 106, you're still giving up a little bit. I mean, that means you got to risk $106 to win 100. I'd rather be in a position to where you can risk 100 and win more than 100 on a game like this. So my lean would be on Canada. My heart's with the US. And me personally, I'm not going to have any action on this game, but I will be watching it as a fan. Um, let's go ahead and talk, though, about as we're into hockey. Let's talk about some tips here, some handicapping tips and things, because there's so many sports. One thing I get asked quite a bit, baseball's coming up, but we're at hockey's going on. You got college basketball. There's a ton of college basketball teams, NBA, NHL. How do you look at so many games and even decide what you might want to play? One thing at this time of the season, you can't watch. I mean, if people ask you watch all these games, you can't watch all of these games. It's just there's just not enough time. And even if you do, a lot of times your eyes are, there's a little bit of a balance, obviously, of having knowledge of the sport, the eye test, but then also analytics. I think you've got to use them all together, and emotion take that out of it basically completely, I believe, when it comes to wagering on sports. When you're looking at this though, when you've got this much data this far into the season, a couple things that I just want to point out if you're looking at wagering on hockey, a couple different things. First of all, I want to point out to people, if you're looking at this second half of the season, starting off, I'm going to tell you who are one thing that I look at. We're going to look at the most profitable home teams and the most profitable road teams. And then we're also going to look at the least profitable home and road teams. What does that mean? Basically, what that means is if you were to wager on a team the same amount every single game, how much money would they have lost you or won? If the team that would have lost you the most money, let's say this, let's say you put $10 on every team, every game, who would have won you the most and who would have lost you the most? And it's not about just overall record, because one of these things, it's not like you're betting against your buddies where you're saying, I think Washington's going to beat Anaheim. Let's do a $10 wager. Well, with the sports books, it's quite a bit different. That's why you've got to look at value plus EV, all this stuff that I don't want to go over people's heads. But first of all, let's look at it this way. Columbus Blue Jackets, 17-10 at home. Good record, not the best record in the NHL, however. But the Columbus Blue Jackets, right now, if you bet on Columbus every single home game so far up to this point, they would have won you more money than any other team at home. So one thing that I would say, and a lot of that is because the Columbus Blue Jackets, I mean, they're solid, but they're not a great team. Losing record overall on the season. That means a lot of times in these home spots, they're an underdog. So that means that, if you wager on them, they win as an underdog. You're betting your $10, you can get back a greater return than that. Where teams who are favored, you have to risk more just to win less. So Columbus Blue Jackets right now, they're going to be the number one home team in the NHL for sports betting profit. LA Kings are going to be second. Winnipeg Jets are going to be third. Anaheim Ducks, not a good team, but they're fourth best at home for profit. And Ottawa Senators are fifth. So that's one thing to keep a look at. So I would tell people, if you're keep an eye on your antennas, this doesn't mean that they're going to win every game, doesn't mean it's going to happen, but keep an eye on Columbus, the LA Kings, the Winnipeg Jets, the Anaheim Ducks, and the Ottawa Senators when they're at home in the second half of the season. Now, as far as on the road, goes, now they've been banged up with some injuries, but still, Minnesota's the most profitable road team. Washington Capitals, a second most profitable road team. It's very, very close. They're almost number one. And as we're mentioning, Washington, I know I stopped with the top five. They're actually seventh most profitable at home. So Washington overall has been a strong play. And Washington overall, when you look, regardless of where they're playing, Washington has been the number one most profitable team in the NHL. But on the road, in this order, you've got Minnesota, Washington, Anaheim again, Montreal, and Detroit. So on the road, look for Minnesota, Washington, Anaheim, Montreal, and Detroit. When at home, keep your eye on Columbus, the LA Kings, Winnipeg, Anaheim, and Ottawa. And if we're just looking overall, because I do want to mention that, and you guys can go back and rewind, and maybe you don't want to hear too much of this hockey talk, but keep a look at Washington. This is overall top money teams for bettors: Washington, Anaheim, Winnipeg, Columbus, and Minnesota. Also, then you've got Detroit, Montreal, Toronto, Dallas, Vegas, the LA Kings, the Ottawa Senators, and then barely the Florida Panthers. Those are the only teams that have made profits. Florida, Ottawa, LA, barely. Vegas, Dallas, basically one loss away from that as a favorite from that completely shifting. As far as some teams to fade, when at home, home ice advantage gets weighed pretty heavy in the NHL. Utah Hockey Club, by far the worst home team for profit. Vancouver Canucks, second worst. Seattle, New Jersey, New York Rangers, not good teams to back at home. So keep an eye when they're at home. A lot of times those teams are overvalued. Worst teams to back on the road by far: Nashville, almost twice as worse than anyone else. Nashville Predators have been horrendous. Stay away from them on the road. San Jose Sharks, they're usually a huge underdog anyway. So but they're as huge of an underdog as they are. It hasn't really mattered. When on the road, they're the second worst. Boston Bruins, third worst. Chicago Blackhawks, LA Kings. Mention how strong LA has been at home. On the road, not so much. And the worst teams overall to back this season in the NHL by far: Nashville, followed by San Jose, Buffalo, the Rangers, and the Blackhawks. What am I saying with this? Check out the worst teams, check out the best teams, see when they're playing each other, look at the lines, don't just blindly lay it. But if you've got Nashville, who is by far the worst profitable team in the NHL, and they're going on the road and they're playing Columbus, and Columbus is a slight underdog. I mean, that's something that you want to look deeper into. And this is going to be NHL gets back on Saturday. Looking at the card, no final decisions, but a couple things. Okay. Columbus Blue Jackets, I mentioned how profitable they are, minus 198 against the Blackhawks. That's not something that I really want to do. That means you basically have to risk about $20 just to win 10. Not wanting to do that. But something that could be a play here, looking at Nashville plus 114 on at home. Colorado Avalanche minus 135, might be a decent price on Colorado there. Washington. No, actually, let's look at this one here. Washington minus 142. Pittsburgh Penguins plus 120. I mean, minus 142, that's a little bit of juice, meaning, you're looking about $14.20 to profit $10. But you've got Washington, second best, almost the best away team in the NHL, going up against the Penguins. And overall, the Pittsburgh Penguins are more towards that bottom portion of the NHL. So just kind of looking at that, we'll look deeper. But Washington minus 142, that may be a play for Saturday. All right, let's talk some college basketball. And I'm looking at this weekend as I'm here. This is going to be really the first time I'm looking at this Saturday card. Right now, I'm recording this on Tuesday, so look, haven't got to Saturday's card just yet because the lines won't be available till Friday morning, midday Friday, Friday night. But a couple tips with college basketball. I mean, you got 364 Division One teams. So how do you even begin to break something like this down? It depends if you want to do, sides or totals. I like to stay away from some of these, top 25 games sometimes. One thing I give advice on here is when you're looking at these lines, if you're looking at a game and it doesn't matter, how much you're betting. Even if your bet size is not that large, always check out the limits on games. If you're looking at a game that has a $20,000 limit versus a game that only has a $500 limit, it's kind of telling you something there. If you think you have an edge on that game with the lower limit, you actually may. The book's not as confident in their numbers. I know a lot of times, people will mention getting limited, wagering long term. That's a whole nother topic, but that there's a lot of truth to that. And you can run into certain games where books will limit you after a amount of time on certain games. But when it comes to the Super Bowl, why will they take a bet of almost any size versus if you want to bet on South Carolina upstate versus Charleston Southern? I'm getting into something here completely different. The amounts are going to be a lot less. So one thing that I will say here, take a look at some of the best against the spread teams and some of the worst against the spread teams and see who's playing each other. That does not mean to blindly bet it. A couple different ways to look at it, and this is why it does still take some skill, of course. But I look at those games as far as things that I want to target. Now you may want to follow some of the best against the spread teams, but you still have to look at the number. Try to come up with the number that you think it should be before looking at the line. Because this way, it can go both ways. There's some teams that have been hot against the spread that you want to ride, but there's also some that you want to fade. And I can't tell you exactly, how that goes. You've got to make those decisions. But the reason I say that there's some teams that have been incredible against the spread, the sports books know it. So now those against the spread teams, the number you're going to start to, some of those teams are going to start to be overvalued, where some are going to still continue to be undervalued. But you've got to look at those lines and make those determinations. The reason I'm mentioning it, though, those are the games that I want to kind of start at. So if you're looking at right now, UC San Diego, best against the spread team in the country, 19-5. Florida A&M, 18-5. I'm just going to rattle these off. Here's some of the best against the spread teams. Robert Morris, San Jose State, Central Connecticut, Southeast Louisiana, Houston Christian, but Houston Christian has been fading as of late. Florida, Virginia Military, Yale, Dartmouth. Those are some teams that you may want to look at their lines. Worst against the spread team so far are going to be, you've got Sam Houston State, North Carolina, Grand Canyon, good team, but often overvalued, Alabama A&M, Cal State Fullerton. You want to look at some of those as far as what games you may want to target. Now, that doesn't mean that's auto fade. I was on Alabama A&M in a winner on Monday. They were playing Pine Bluff, but it was almost a straight up, -1. So got some value on that. So it could go both ways. Hopefully this isn't going on over anybody's head or too boring, but at the end of the day, if it is, I guess you could always tune out. Appreciate it. If you're still here, leave me a comment. Let me know what some of the topics that you may want to hear going forward, and get some try to get some guests on here, make it a little bit more engaging. But one thing that I do want to point out before I go, college basketball, one thing to point out, and I did ride with Temple in the over successfully on Sunday. If we're looking at just totals for conference games, something to target. And the books know this, but the lines apparently just have not been high enough yet. Temple 13-0 to the over in conference games this year. Howard 8-1 to the over. Northwestern from the Big Ten 13-2 to the over. Oregon State 12-2 to the over. Jackson State, Butler, Lemoyne, Boston College, USC, Portland. Those are going to be your best over the total teams in conference play. Your best under the total teams, or worst under the total teams in conference play. Samford 1-13 to the over. 13 of their 14 conference games have gone under. New Mexico State, Fairleigh Dickinson, Lehigh, Utah, Troy, Georgia, Kennesaw State, St. Louis, App State, Those have all been good teams to ride with the unders. Not saying that you blindly wager on those, but just some things to look at. So those are teams that I'll look at. I may like it, I may not. But when you get to this when you get to this point of the season, a lot of the games involving like Duke or so, I just kind of like to stay away from those games. That's just me personally. I try to find something under the radar. So anyway, I think I've gone on enough about that, but hopefully those tips were a little bit useful if you're a little bit of a nerd about this like I am. I'm David Delano. Thanks so much for watching. We're going to be doing this frequently, so go ahead. I'm going to do more than just daily picks. Thanks for checking out this edition of the Get Sports Strong podcast. Check out getsportstrong.com. Also, follow me on X at Get Sports Strong. Be keeping you in the loop there. You can get more from me, including radio appearances I make, along with some television appearances. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe. I appreciate it. God bless as always. Have a great day.